They said there are secrets money cannot hide, but in Lagos, money often hides everything: pain, lust, betrayal, even the silent screams of broken souls. This is not an ordinary story. This is a story of a woman who rose from the dust of a forgotten village to become one of the most powerful businesswomen in Africa, a woman people called Madame Folake the Sugar Queen. She owned estates in Ikoyi hotels in Dubai and a fleet of cars that turned heads even in Banana Island. But behind the tinted windows of her black Range Rover and the luxurious gates of her mansion, there was a rumor so wild, so shocking, that even the men who claimed to know her swore on their mothers' graves they had seen things they couldn't believe. They said Folake demanded not one, but two young men every night. Two strangers, never the same face twice, were brought to her. Some said it was for love. Others said it was for power. Some whispered of rituals, of revenge against men who once broke her. But only those who crossed her threshold understood the weight of her eyes and the fire of her secrets. Tonight we tell her story, not as gossip, but as truth, from the dusty paths of Ogun State to the flashing lights of Lagos nightlife. From heartbreak to vengeance, this is a journey of power, passion, and a woman who refused to be ordinary. Folake's story began far away from the skyscrapers of Victoria Island. She was born in a small village called Alaro, a place where palm trees lean into the wind like old women whispering secrets, and the air carried the smell of wood smoke and wet earth. Her father, Pa Adebanjo, was a cocoa farmer, strong, stern, and proud of his Yoruba roots. Her mother, Mama Saad, sold akra and pap by the roadside, always with a wrapper tied tightly around her waist. They were poor but decent, raising Folake with the belief that education was the only way to climb above poverty. But life, as it often does, laughed at their plans. By 17, Folake was known in the village not only for her beauty, but for her sharp tongue and stubborn will. Boys followed her, men admired her, but she wanted more than admiration. She wanted freedom. When she earned a scholarship to study accounting in Lagos, the entire village came to send her off. There were drums, prayers, and the promise that she would make them proud. Lagos, however, was not the land of milk and honey she imagined. It was noise, sweat, ambition, and danger wrapped in glitter. She stayed with a distant cousin in Surulere, sharing a cramped room where the fan worked only when Nipa allowed. She studied hard, but life demanded more than books. School fees were late, meals were skipped, and her cousin's patience grew thin. Then came Tund. Tund was the kind of man Lagos produced in abundance. Smooth talker, designer shirts, always with a phone glued to his ear. He was 10 years older than Folake and worked in a bank. He taught her how to survive the city, how to navigate buses, how to dress for interviews, how to fake confidence when she was trembling inside. At first, he was like an older brother, but nights of studying together, evenings of shared bread and sardines, and long walks after lectures soon turned into something more. Folake loved him blindly, fiercely. When she was 21, she discovered she was pregnant. Tund promised marriage, sweet words laced with lies, and she believed. But the week she told him, he vanished. His phone lines went dead, his apartment empty, his friends suddenly strangers. Folake was left alone, pregnant, broke, and ashamed. The child came, a boy she named Ayodele. Joy has come. But joy didn't come easily. Her cousin threw her out, saying, "This is not a baby factory." Folake begged, but Lagos is cruel to young mothers with no money. She lived in a small one-room shack in Mushin, working any job she could find, cleaning offices, selling recharge cards, even washing clothes for neighbors. She swore that no man would ever make her beg again. Life hardened her. By the time she turned 30, Ayodele was in primary school, and Folake had discovered something about herself. She was brilliant at business. Started with a small loan from a women's cooperative. She sold Ankara fabrics, later imported Italian shoes, then opened a boutique in Lekki. Her eye for trends, her sharp negotiations, and her fearless charm drew customers. She worked like a woman possessed. But love had died in her. By 35, Folake was no longer the village girl. She was the woman people called Madam. She drove a Lexus, moved to a duplex in Acadia, and Ayodele attended one of the best private schools. She wore confidence like a crown, but inside, the old wounds festered. She had seen men betray, abandon, and mock women like her. And so, she decided, if the world thought she was weak, she would show them strength in the most unexpected way. It began innocently. A young man who helped her carry groceries to her car, his smile easy, his compliments bold. She gave him a ride. One thing led to another. And for the first time in years, she felt wanted, not as a mother, not as a hustler, but as a woman. She paid for the room. She set the rules. And when it was over, she left. But something awakened in her that night. She realized she enjoyed control. She enjoyed choosing, paying, and leaving without attachment. She began seeking younger men, sometimes students, sometimes struggling artists, sometimes gym instructors. They were not lovers. They were distractions. She gave gifts. They gave her moments. Then the stories grew bolder. 2 young men. Why 2? It started after a heartbreak. Another businessman she had trusted cheated her in a deal, and worse, mocked her behind closed doors. Folklore turned her pain into power. She told herself, no man would ever hurt her again. If she was to love, it would be on her terms. If she was to take, she would take twice as much. By 40, she was rich, very rich. Her boutique had grown into a chain of luxury stores. She owned apartments, shares in oil servicing companies, and a hotel. She was a mystery to many, a queen to some, a threat to others. And at night, behind the high gates of her mansion, she began a ritual. 2 young men, never the same, never staying. Some said she laughed with them. Some said she cried after her. Some claimed they saw her pray afterward. In the high-end clubs of Lagos, whispers followed her. In the corridors of power, men respected her but spoke of her with fear. They didn't understand her need. They only judged it. But Folklore didn't care. For her, it was more than pleasure. It was power, healing, a way of saying, I own my story now. Yet, not all nights ended in laughter. One night, in the heart of rainy season, 2 young men stepped into her home, one quiet, one reckless, and something happened that would change everything. Secrets collided, love returned unexpectedly, and revenge, long buried, rose like fire. And this is where our story truly begins. The rain that night came like an uninvited guest, loud against the glass, restless on the marble. Folklore stood in the hallway of her mansion, wearing a robe of deep wine-red silk, her hair wrapped in a matching scarf. The clock ticked close to midnight when the gates opened and the security guard ushered them in, 2 young men, both strangers, both chosen. She always chose them herself, never through an agency, never through friends. It was a silent rule. She wanted control from the first glance. The eyes told her everything she needed to know. And tonight, she wanted distraction, something to quiet the storm inside her. The first one, Adewale, was a fitness instructor from Yaba. His arms carried the weight of years in the gym, and his smile was a weapon, white teeth against rich, dark skin. He greeted her confidently, not like a boy meeting a queen, but like a man who knew his worth. The second one, Chike, was different, slimmer, with the wiry frame of a dancer. He had Igbo features sharp as blades, and his clothes were simple but neat. There was something quiet about him, something watchful. He didn't smile much, but his eyes missed nothing. Folklore looked at them both and thought, good. Remove your shoes, she said softly, almost like command. They obeyed. Dinner was already set. A spread of jollof rice rich with smoke, fried plantains golden and sweet, grilled fish seasoned with atarodo, and a bottle of red wine breathing on the table. Folklore always believed in feeding people well before anything else. Hunger, she often said, makes men restless. They ate, talked a little. Adewale charmed her with gym stories and clients who wanted more than training. Chike mostly listened, but when he spoke, it was with wit, sharp and dry. Then, when the plates were cleared and the house grew quiet, she led them upstairs. The room was large, its walls lined with African art, bronze masks, bold fabrics, photographs of women from history. Folklore's taste was elegant, not gaudy. There was nothing desperate about the space. It was a woman's room, powerful and intimate. She moved like water, deliberate graceful, untouchable. They followed. For Folklore, these nights were not about love. They were not even always about pleasure. They were about control, about reclaiming what was taken from her in a world that chewed women and spat them out. Every gesture was hers, every choice deliberate. She was tender when she wanted to be, fierce when she decided. She made rules, she broke them. But tonight, something was different. It was Chaik. He was calm but unafraid, watching her with an intensity she was not used to. There was no arrogance, no shame, no hunger for money in his eyes, just curiosity. And when he finally spoke, it was not the usual praise or flattery she had come to expect. "Why do you do this?" he asked quietly when Adewale stepped out to take a phone call. Folklore paused, her robe slipping slightly at the shoulder. She should have been angry. Questions were not encouraged. But there was something disarming in his tone, gentle, not mocking. "Because I can," she replied. He didn't look away. "No, that's not the only reason." She studied him, young, maybe mid-20s, but his eyes held a weight older than his years. "And if I told you," she said slowly, "you wouldn't understand." "Try me," he said. Something about his confidence unsettled her, but not in a bad way. It was rare to meet someone who saw past the silk, the money, the power. For a moment, she saw herself reflected in his gaze. Not as Madame Folklore, not as a sugar queen, but as a girl who once walked barefoot in a laurel, who once believed love could be enough. When Adewale returned, the moment broke, and the night continued as usual. But the seed was planted. By morning, Adewale left with his envelope. Cash folded neatly, a handshake, a smile. Chaik stayed behind, saying he had no rush. Folklore allowed it, something she never did. They drank tea on the balcony as the city stirred below, and for the first time in a long time, she found herself talking. She told him of the boy who left her, of the hunger that carved her bones, of selling clothes in the market, and being cheated by men who laughed at her. She didn't tell everything, but enough. Chaik listened. No judgment, no pity, just silence when it was needed and questions when it was right. And then he said something that stopped her. "Maybe you're punishing the wrong man." The words hung between them like smoke. That day, Folklore could not shake them off. She had meetings, calls, deliveries. Her staff moved around her like bees. But in her mind, she kept seeing Chaik's eyes. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was everything. The weeks that followed were different. Folklore tried to carry on as usual, but she found herself seeking him again. She never repeated men, but she called him, just once, just to hear his voice. He came, not as a boy to be paid, but as someone she wanted to see. They talked more than they touched. He teased her, challenged her, asked questions she had long buried. "Do you still love him?" he asked once, meaning tunned. "No," she said too quickly. "Then why do you carry him like a scar?" She didn't answer. But if life was giving her softness again, the city was brewing storms. One evening, as she left her boutique in Lekki, a car pulled up. It was black, sleek, tinted. A man stepped out, older, heavy-set, with a politician's smile. "Madame Folklore," he said, stretching a hand. "It's been a long time." She knew him. Chief Bamidele, a man she once trusted in business, a man who betrayed her in a land deal that nearly ruined her. "I have nothing to say to you," she said coldly. But he smiled wider. "You want to hear this. It's about your son." The name hit her like thunder. Ayodele, her boy, now a young man, studying abroad on her money. Her pride. "What about him?" she asked. Chief Bamidele leaned closer, his cologne heavy. "You've made enemies, Folklore, and not everyone forgives as easily as you think. Watch your back." That night, she couldn't sleep. The old fears returned. Men who had cheated her, deals she had crushed, whispers in corridors. She had fought to be here, but she knew the world had sharp teeth. And now, Chaik's words echoed, "Maybe you're punishing the wrong men." The following weeks were a strange dance of power and vulnerability. Folklore was not a woman easily distracted. Her days were filled with meetings, supply chains, contractors, and investments. But now, amidst invoices and bank alerts, She found herself glancing at her phone too often, waiting for a message. And when it came, she answered faster than she liked to admit. Chike had entered her life quietly but was now everywhere. Sometimes it was a voice note at midnight, soft and teasing. Sometimes a brief call that stretched into an hour, laughter spilling into silences. And sometimes he was simply at her gate, unannounced but always welcome. For a woman who had sworn off men, this was dangerous ground. One evening, Lagos was restless. A power outage darkened streets. Generators hummed across the city. Folake's mansion glowed like a lantern in the night. Inside, she paced. Her son, Ayadil, was due to visit from London soon, and Chief Bamidil's warning still sat heavy on her mind. When Chike arrived that night, she did something unusual. She poured herself a glass of palm wine instead of the usual champagne. They sat on the cool tiles of her wide living room floor, the air smelling of rain-soaked earth from her garden. "You've been quiet," he said. "I've been thinking," she replied, sipping. "About enemies, about mistakes." Chike tilted his head. "You're powerful, Folake. Powerful people always have enemies. But enemies are only dangerous when they know your fears." "You speak like an old man," she teased, but her smile faded quickly. "There's someone who wants to hurt me, or maybe hurt my son." Chike's face grew serious. "Tell me everything." So she did. She told him about Chief Bamidil, about the betrayal in the land deal years ago, about how she crushed his attempt to steal from her. She told him of the countless times men underestimated her, cheated her, only to find she was sharper than they imagined. And now, here he was again, smiling like a snake, whispering threats about her only child. "Does Ayadil know any of this?" Chike asked. "No," Folake said firmly. "He's my pride. I wanted him far from all this." They sat in silence for a while, the weight of her confession hanging between them. Then Chike leaned closer, voice low. "Then maybe it's time to stop playing defense. Maybe it's time to teach them who they're dealing with." Something in his tone made her look at him differently. He was young, yes, but there was steel in his voice, a calmness that belonged to someone who had seen too much. "Why do you care?" she asked softly. He met her gaze without hesitation. "Because you're not the woman they think you are. And because I care." The words were simple, but for Folake, they cracked something open. For years, she had kept the world at arm's length. She had taken lovers, not partners. She had paid for company, not companionship. And now here was this boy, not asking, not demanding, just staying. That night, there was no pretense, no performance, no need to command. It was different, gentler, slower, almost terrifying in its honesty. But life doesn't pause for tender moments. A few days later, Ayadil returned. He was taller than she remembered, his shoulders broader, his smile still boyish. The pride Folake felt watching him wheel his suitcase into her mansion was the kind of joy that ached. "Mama," he called, embracing her. "My son," she said, holding him longer than necessary. For a while, the house was filled with laughter and stories. Ayadil spoke of London, of classes, of friends, of a girl he liked. Folake cooked his favorite meals, egusi jollof, roasted goat meat. For those moments, she felt whole. But the world outside her gates was restless. One evening, as mother and son shared dinner, the security guard knocked. "Madam," he said, "there's someone at the gate. Says it's urgent." It was Chief Bamidil. He stood there, smiling, but his eyes were hard. "You ignored my warning," he said when she met him at the gate, her son safely inside. "I have nothing to discuss with you," she said coldly. "Then you will regret it," he snapped. "Not every battle can be fought with money. Folake, remember that." She turned away, but the chill in his voice followed her. Days later, the threat revealed itself, not through violence, but through whispers. One morning, her boutique manager called, panicked. "Madam, something is wrong. There's a rumor spreading. Someone is saying you are paying young men for company. They say you demand 2 at a time." Folake froze. It wasn't the truth that scared her. It was the timing. The rumor spread like harmattan fire. WhatsApp groups buzzed. Twitter threads speculated. Even the press sniffed around. They called it scandal. They called it shame. They called her names. But Folklore didn't flinch. She had faced hunger, betrayal, abandonment. Words were nothing. But she feared for Ideal, for how he would see her now. That night, she found herself on the balcony again, alone this time, staring at the lights of Lagos. And then a voice behind her. You knew this day would come, Chike said. She turned, startled. You shouldn't be here. Why not? You look like you need someone. Something broke in her. The anger, the fear, the exhaustion, all of it spilled. They want to shame me, Chike. As if I haven't bled for everything I own. As if I owe this world explanations. Do they know what it means to raise a child alone? To beg for rent? To be laughed at because you're a woman? I will not bow. Not to them. Not to anyone. Chike stepped closer, his hand steady on her shoulders. Then don't bow. Fight. Use what they think is your weakness. Turn it into your strength. Her breathing slowed, the fire in her chest cooling. And if it costs me my son's respect, she whispered, then you tell him the truth, Chike said softly, before the world twists it. The next day, she did something she had feared for years. She sat Ideal down. Son, she began, there are things you don't know about me, things people will try to use against me. He listened, confused, then curious, then silent. She spoke carefully, not sparing the pain, but not drowning him in details. She told him of Tund, of hunger, of the fight to build a life. She told him she made choices, some proud, some private, and that none of it changed her love for him. When she finished, there was a long pause. Then Ideal said, Mama, you did what you had to do. I don't care what they say. You're still the strongest person I know. Folklore wept silently, but the battle wasn't over. Chief Bamidil was not finished. Rumor was only his first weapon. Something darker was coming. Something that would force Folklore to face not only her enemies, but also the choices that had defined her. And as she looked at Chike that evening, something unspoken passed between them. Whatever was coming, she would not face it alone. The morning after a talk with Ideal, Folklore woke with a rare sense of calm. For years, she had built walls, lived behind shadows of secrecy, and carried the weight of judgment that never came face to face. But now, at least in her son's eyes, she was free. The truth was out. But freedom doesn't mean safety. Within days, the storm outside intensified. Blog headlines screamed, Mystery Millionaire's dark secret exposed inside the Sugar Queen's mansion. 2 men every night. Anonymous sources fed details. Some true, most lies. Pictures of Folklore stepping out of her Range Rover, clips from charity events, old photos from university. They were all suddenly ammunition. Her business felt the sting. A supplier called to pause deliveries. A church women's fellowship uninvited her from an event. Clients whispered. Staff avoided her eyes. But Folklore did not shrink. On a Monday morning, she called a staff meeting. In her boutique's head office, sunlight poured through wide glass windows, but the room was tense. Employees shifted nervously as she stood at the front, dressed in white, bold and calm. You have all heard the rumors, she began. Some of them are true. Some are lies. But let me remind you, I built this company with my own hands. I fed my son with nothing but grit and God's mercy. And no rumor, no man, no headline will stop us. If any of you think this is the end, leave now. If you believe in me, stand with me. Not a single chair moved. One by one, heads lifted, some smiled, others nodded. She felt strength rush back into her bones. But outside that room, Chief Bamidil moved like a silent storm. He wasn't satisfied with mere scandal. He wanted Folklore broken, humiliated. He wanted her empire gone because she had once bested him. And men like him did not forgive. One evening, as the rain drummed hard on the mansion's roof, a call came from Ideal's friend in London, Mrs. Ade Banjo. Something's wrong. The boy said, I think someone's trying to ruin Ideal's visa. He might get called in for questioning. They're saying he's funded by illegal money. The phone nearly slipped from her hand. Money laundering? False allegations? It was clear Bamidil was using influence, reaching into corridors she could not easily enter. He was attacking where it hurt the most, her son. She sat still for a long moment. Then she called Chaik. He arrived in minutes, rain on his shirt, eyes sharp. She told him everything, her voice breaking only once when she said, "He's going after my boy." Chaik listened, then leaned forward. "You once told me men cheated you, underestimated you, but you fought and won. This is no different. You just need to think like them." "I'm tired, Chaik," she whispered. "I know, but you can't stop now." Then, for the first time, Chaik told her his own story. He spoke of growing up in Ajagunal, of a father who left, of a mother who worked herself sick to keep him in school. He told her how he learned to hustle, to watch people, to survive. He had worked in places where information was a currency, where secrets were more valuable than gold. "I have friends," he said. "People owe me favors. Let me help." Folake hesitated. Trust was not something she gave easily. But the look in his eyes was steady, loyal. "All right," she said. "We fight." The days that followed were war, but not the kind with guns. It was emails traced, calls recorded, lawyers hired, politicians whispered to. Chaik moved quietly, speaking people Folake had never met. Security officers, journalists, even a junior staffer in a ministry. He gathered pieces of a puzzle. And then one night, he came to her with a flash drive. "What's this?" she asked. "Proof," he said simply, "of everything Bamidil has done. Illegal deals, bribes, fraud. Enough to bury him." Her breath caught. "How did you?" "Sometimes," he said, "the streets remember things the rich forget to hide. But victory is never clean." When Bamidil discovered she was digging, he struck first. A video surfaced online, a shaky, grainy clip of Folake laughing with two young men in her home. Nothing explicit, but enough to ignite gossip. It went viral. For a day, Lagos burned with commentary. Churches preached, offices buzzed, radio hosts debated. They called her immoral. They called her brave. They called her everything in between. Folake stayed silent. Then she called a press conference. The hall was packed with cameras, lights, microphones. She stepped onto the podium, Ankara flowing like a banner of defiance. Her head high. Ayodele stood behind her, proud. Chaik watched from the side. "Good afternoon," she began, voice calm. "Yes, I am the woman you have heard about. Yes, I have made choices that are mine alone. I built this life from nothing. When men left me hungry, I fed myself. When they closed doors, I broke walls. I will not apologize for surviving. I will not apologize for living. And to those who think they can shame me or harm my son, know this. I have nothing to hide, and I have proof of crimes far worse than dinner with two young men." Then she handed the flash drive to a reporter. "Run the story," she said. By nightfall, the tables had turned. Headlines shifted from scandal to exposure. Chief Bamidil implicated in multi-million naira fraud. Screens buzzed with leaked documents. Politicians distanced themselves. Allies vanished. And suddenly, the hunter was hunted. Folake did not rejoice. She simply exhaled. Later that week, she sat on her balcony, the city glowing below, the air thick with the scent of wet earth after rain. Chaik was there, quiet as always. "You won," he said. "No," she replied softly. "I survived." He smiled. "Sometimes that's the same thing." She looked at him then, really looked at him. "And what about you? Why did you stay?" Chaik shrugged, a rare shyness in his posture. "Maybe I saw something worth staying for." Folake laughed softly, shaking her head. "You're too young for me." "Age doesn't scare me," he said, and the warmth in his voice was undeniable. For a long moment, neither spoke. The city hummed, a world full of stories, victories, betrayals. Folake leaned back, closed her eyes, and for the first time in many years, allowed herself to feel something like peace.